On this channel, I like to keep things positive and exciting, like telling you about the latest upcoming games or reviewing the latest games. I want you guys to be excited about JRPGs, but unfortunately, every once in a while we get sad news that is disappointing, and this video unfortunately is one of those videos. So last year there was a game that got a huge amount of money on Kickstarter called Alzara Radiant Echoes, and it had a really amazing art style. It looked really cool, like it had a lot of veteran game developers, and it seemed like it was bound for success. However, today they announced that the studio is closing and the game is basically canceled. And I want to go into some of these details because I think a lot of people don't really understand how something like this can happen. And being on the developer side for a handful of years, I used to work at a game developer, and talking with indie teams behind the scenes, I have a little bit of extra context that a lot of you guys might not know about or might not understand. So I want to provide that and hopefully make a little bit more sense of this situation. So you might be thinking like, okay, they were only asking for $100,000 and they got $300,000 in their Kickstarter campaign. Like, how could they not have enough money to finish the game? Well, one thing to take into account is even though it raised $300,000, Kickstarter takes their cut. I forget what that is. I think it's like somewhere between 10 and 20%. I forget exactly what it is, but they don't get every single cent of that. And also, something that a lot of teams have been doing with Kickstarters lately is they're not using it to fully fund their game. What they're doing is they're using that money to then take to a publisher and be like, hey, look, there's a lot of people that want to play this game. Here's how successful our Kickstarter was. Oh, by the way, we've been using that money to make a demo or a vertical slice that we can show you. Let's get something on paper and let's get a contract going and you can publish our game and blah, blah, blah. Now, a good example of this was Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes. Now, they had a big Kickstarter campaign, but 505 stepped in and then ended up publishing the game. Unfortunately, what happened here with Alzara Radiant Echoes is that they built the demo, they had all this ready to show, but they couldn't find anyone that wanted to publish their game, which to me is crazy. As you know, someone that's been playing JRPGs for so long, this game looked incredibly promising. And the really sad thing is, and I might have had footage, over the video as I've been talking right now, they posted the demo. They had a lot of footage to show from the demo and they posted it. And so you can see what it would have looked like. And it looks gorgeous. It looks like, it reminds me a lot of Chrono Cross, like this kind of Mediterranean island feeling vibe. They showed bits of combat, they had some voiceover, they had some music, like it looked amazing. I cannot understand how not a single publisher out there wanted to fund this game. Now, maybe it's one of those things where they didn't talk to the right partner. Maybe it's they didn't have enough to show. I don't really understand how those particular parts of deals happen. But to me, what this really speaks to is I feel like there's not a lot of publishers out there that really understand the JRPG market, because I feel like if we just look at the recent landscape, it's either AAA or total like one-man, two-man indie games, right? If you think of like in recent history, like what were the big JRPGs from last year? We had Metaphor, Persona 3 Reload, Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth. I know some people don't really consider this a JRPG, but we had Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. Like these are big games, right? But then you have, the indie games. You've got your Chained Echoes, your 8-Bit Adventures 2. This year we've got games like Quartet, Artist Impact, tiny games from tiny teams. So I guess what I'm getting at is that middle ground, that like kind of AA or single A game where I think this fits into, it seems like people just aren't willing to support that. But from a publisher perspective, but as a player, my God, do I want to play this game. If I had the money, I would give it to them and be like, hey, I'll publish the game. They did say that $300,000 was about half of what they needed to finish the game. So they needed an additional $300,000. To me, that is a really small budget. Like when you think of some of these big AAA games, they are tens of millions, if not over $100 million. So like $300,000, that's nothing. I cannot believe they couldn't find a publisher that was willing to give them $300,000. That seems like an insignificant amount of money. But this speaks to a bigger problem that I feel like is happening, because this is not the only like AA, single A style JRPG that had success on Kickstarter that could not also find additional funding. And two more of those games were Penny Blood and Armed Fantasia. Now, if you're unfamiliar, Penny Blood is a spiritual successor to Shadow Hearts from a lot of the original team members, and Armed Fantasia is a spiritual successor to Wild Arms, again with a lot of the original team members. But they also posted recently that the games are essentially indefinitely delayed because they cannot find publishing partners. So that speaks to there is a hole in the market. There is a giant missing hole in the market for publishers to publish these kind of AA, single A style games. I just don't understand how nobody saw these games and thought, oh, there's a market for that. Yeah, we'll give you $300,000, $1 million to go finish your game. Again, that's not a lot of money, and I think they would recoup those costs pretty quick. I tell you, I wish I was rich and I could go fund these games, man, because they look incredible, and I don't understand how nobody was willing to step in and fund these games. Now, the unfortunate reality of Alzara Radiant Echoes in particular is that because it was, funded on Kickstarter campaign, none of the backers are going to get their money back. I'm assuming because they spent the money. Like, it's impossible for them to give the money back when it's gone. Like, they spent it all trying to finish the game, and they got as far as they could, and they just had to basically file for bankruptcy or liquidate the company. Pick your verbiage. I'm not a legal expert, but they just didn't have the money. So this is really sad. I feel for anyone that kickstarted the game and did not get what they promised. The other thing to speak to is I think this really damages big JRPG Kickstarters in the future. Between this and Penny Blood and Armed Fantasia, I think people are going to be hesitant to kickstart a game when these big ones just aren't getting publishers behind them. So it's like, well, if these guys can't finish their game, why would I give you my money? I feel bad for anyone in the future that is going to be doing a Kickstarter. In fact, I know some indie teams that are going to be doing a Kickstarter. So I feel bad for them because I feel like this sort of poisons the well. There are some games that I want to support because I really want to cheer for these guys and I want them to do well, but I just don't know if they're going to make it to the finish line. But either way, would love to hear your thoughts. This is a giant bummer. I really hope that this doesn't happen in the future. I hope that there is someone that can step in and fill this void of a publisher that's willing to publish these types of games, because I just feel like there is a market for it. I'm telling you, there's enough people out there that would buy these games. So now, unfortunately, this wasn't the only bad news of the day. If you're watching this, I'm wearing the same shirt in a different video because I'm filming these on the same day. So if you want to hear some unfortunate news about the Final Fantasy Tactics remaster, watch this video next.